Shalom Aleichem. Chaim Malevsky here in the sub-teen weather, Cleveland, Ohio. Running on a different route, but we'll give it a shot. Parshat Vayechi. Have you ever thought about who your poster figures were growing up? As a child, I recall seeing on the walls of my friends' rooms and homes and bedrooms posters of sports legends, champions of all kinds of disciplines, martial arts, actors, etc. People who they aspired to emulate in some way. In our home, the poster was the Rebbe. Pictures of the Rebbe in our home and in millions of other homes. The poster on the wall is the Rebbe as he inspired and inspires us to be the best version of ourselves, to fulfill our unique, godly given mission using our talents. If you don't yet have a picture of the Rebbe on your wall, you can get one at any Jewish bookstore or online. Just do a search, the Rebbe. But here's a fascinating twist. In Judaism, we also have big posters, but for whom we want our children to emulate, but they're not, as one might expect, Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Milton. They are actually two unknown children of Yosef. When Yaakov, Joseph's father, in this week's Torah portion, is on his deathbed, Joseph brings his sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, to be blessed. And he blesses them. And then he actually says to them and to Joseph, he says that for all future generations, the Jewish people will bless themselves through you, with you, saying, may God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh. Ephraim and Manasseh, who are they? What do we even know about them? Well, one thing we know is that they're Yosef's sons, Yaakov's grandchildren. But why do they merit to have this great blessing? For all future generations, Yaakov, our forefather Jacob, elevated them to a status above his own children and above his fathers, Abraham and Isaac, giving them a role that surpasses all of the above, to be blessed. And not only that, but in an intriguing moment when he's about to bless them, Yaakov deliberately crosses over his hands and places his right hand on the younger son and his left hand on the older, deliberately blessing the younger one first and with greater blessings. Joseph, in Egypt, when he saw this, he panicked, flooded by possibly memories of his brother's jealousy that didn't bode too well. And Yosef called out, Lo chein avi, not so my father. And not only that, but he was thinking that his father just didn't see in his old age. And there are some commentaries that say that he was blind at the time. But Yosef tried to actually physically move Yaakov's hands to the right order, to put the right hand on the older child and the left hand on the younger. But Yaakov said, no, I did this on purpose. And that's the question. I'm getting to a little bit of a noisy spot here. Actually running to the kosher food pantry right now to help my wife. bring sign in the people. I'll try to figure this out, navigate the noise. So Yosef tried to fix his father's hands, and his father said, no, I'm doing this on purpose. Why? Didn't Yaakov know the risks involved of favoring younger siblings? That didn't have a good track record in the whole book of Vayechi of Genesis. Let's go back to the beginning. Cain, the younger son who was jealous, killed Hevel. Cain killed Hevel. At the time, it was a quarter of the world's population. There were only 4 people in the world at the time: Adam, Eve, Cain, and Abel. Moving down a few thousand years, Ishmael tried to kill Isaac when Isaac was favored. Moving down, Joseph, Esav himself, Yaakov's brother, Jacob's brother, tried to kill him, or vowed to kill him, because Yaakov was being favored by his father, Isaac. And then now Yosef was traumatized, arguably, by his father's favoring him and all the trouble it caused from his brothers. So Yosef knew that this was not a good idea. What was Yaakov thinking is the question. So the answer actually lies in a message that Yaakov was trying to transmit to all future generations. And it was in what Ephraim and Menashe represented. Yaakov had blessed the younger son, Ephraim, before the older son, Menashe. And Menashe, the older son, was just fine with that. And he didn't resent it, and he didn't complain. And not only that, but Ephraim, the younger son, didn't become haughty from it, didn't flaunt his blessings, his greater blessings. Both of them remained steadfast in their unique missions and their unique blessings that God had given them through Jacob. And this is the harmony that Yaakov was seeking. This is the harmony that is empowering and confidence building. An idea that the Rebbe often would teach, that each person has a unique divine mission that is incomparable to anyone else's. And this is what Yaakov was excited about and wanted to share with his future descendants. There was a young student who was having trouble studying. Maybe he was dyslexic, I don't know. But he was a Talmudic student, and he wasn't succeeding. And he complained to an acquaintance of mine, a rabbi in Europe, that things weren't going well, and he was upset with God. Why did God allow this to happen? He tried so hard. So my friend, the Rabbi Slabatitsky, he asked, why have you asked other rabbis about this? He said, yes, I asked many, but none of them satisfied me. He said, one of them, he asked one rabbi told him, it's the effort. Like, just try harder and you'll succeed. Basically, this boy wanted to be a great genius in Torah study, and some of his friends were achieving that goal, that role. So he wanted to be what we call a gaon. So his one rabbi told him, yes, try harder, you'll achieve it. If you just put in the effort, you'll make it. You'll succeed. Another rabbi said, it's something to do with reincarnation. You are not meant to be a genius, a gaon. You're meant to be a regular person like the rest of us. By the way, parenthetically, it's the Kosher Food Pantry. This is the first Chabad house in Cleveland, Ohio, 2004 South Green Road. This is where I grew up. I went to synagogue here. I was 5, 6 years old, etc. And the kosher food pantry right now is housed out of this. My wife is the director, and they're distributing food to people. And I'm supposed to be there, but I will come soon to help out. But until then, let's get back on the show, get the show back on the road. So this man, the Chabad rabbi, asked the student, he said, have you asked the Lubavitcher Rebbe this? And he said, not yet. He said, so why don't you ask the Rebbe? And he did. And the Rebbe answered a different answer. Now I'm getting distracted over here, but here my wife is signing in a car. All those cars over there are cars who are getting the food. And this is my wife Sarah, who's signing in some people as we speak. I'll be back soon. I don't think she believes me. Anyway, so he says, ask the Rebbe. And the Rebbe responded, he said, I've studied quite a bit, many, if not all of the books of the Torah. And I haven't found one book where it says that one needs to be a gaon, that you need to be a genius who excels in everything. I've seen many books that say that we need to put an effort with the talents that God gave us, and that's what God wants, for us to do what we can with what we have. Another related story, and this is what Ephraim and Menashe were happy with their lot on both sides. Another fun story is about a classic story about a philanthropist, which the Rebbe had actually related a few times, where there was this great philanthropist who was very refined, and he never got his hands dirty. But they came to a city for Shabbos, and it was Friday evening, and he washed himself off, went to the synagogue, and on the way, but in the olden days, the way they traveled was by wagon, by horse and buggy. So he went with his wagon driver, and I'm going to try to get away from the noise over here, see if that works. He went with his wagon driver, and the wagon driver quickly washed himself and popped into the synagogue, to the shul, and the philanthropist took a little more time. Maybe he went to the mikvah, and he goes to the synagogue. Right before he hits the shul, he hears this outcry, another wagon with its driver, and another philanthropist is sitting there in the mud. And this is moments before Shabbos, so he quickly, throws off his hat and tie and gets to work to help them, because that's what you're supposed to do, help another person. And long story short, he was unsuccessful in helping them, and he got completely muddied and dirtied, and he didn't even go to shul because he was completely covered in filth. So, but the wagon driver made it to the shul, made it to the synagogue, and on his way out, in those days, there would be many people who didn't have the funds, either homeless or beggars, who would be at the back of the synagogue, and they would wait for someone to take them home for the Shabbat dinner. So he saw this line of beggars waiting to be taken home for the Shabbat dinner, and he wanted to help them, but he didn't have, his boss wasn't there, he didn't know what happened to him, so he couldn't achieve his goal, and he didn't take anyone. So the Rebbe would say that here we have two people who had opposing roles, different roles. Had they each stayed in their role, then the missions would have been accomplished. Had the philanthropist called a wagon driver to help in the mud and then pull out the horses, the horses would have been back on track, and the beggars would have had a meal to eat. But since they didn't, since each one tried to do the other's role, it didn't work. So too over here, says the Rebbe, that when Ephraim and Menashe accepted their roles, whatever it was, even though it wasn't seemingly appropriate. That's what Yaakov, our forefather Jacob, saw and wanted to transmit to the rest of his children. There's more to this idea, and it gets a little bit deeper or better. We realize Ephraim and Manasseh weren't just harmonious, they were also resilient, because they grew up in Egypt, which is the epicenter of immorality and idolatry, and they remained Jewish. And imagine Yaakov's astonishment, pleasant surprise, when he saw his boys who had grown up in the palace of Pharaoh walking around with Jewish pride and their Jewish identity, when they had no Jewish neighbors, no Jewish education, no community, no support. But they stayed true to their heritage, even though their father was very, very busy taking care of the world. And this answers a parenthetic question about why our forefathers, when we say we have the forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, it stops there. Why don't we have 5 fathers or 2 fathers? Actually, why not just Abraham? So the Rebbe says an interesting thing. He says that the idea of fathers, you see, we call our founding members of the nation of the Jewish people, we call them fathers, not founders. And the Rebbe says because their whole goal was to transmit God's way of life to the children and to the future generations. And when that was solidified through Ephraim and Manasseh, there didn't need to be any more fathers. So what happens was Abraham, the first Jew, first founding member, first father, he had a child who went in his ways, Isaac, Yitzchak, but he also had another child who didn't go in his ways, Ishmael. Isaac, Yitzchak, he had a child who went in his ways, Yaakov, Jacob, but he also had a child who didn't go in his ways, and that was Esav. Now when Yaakov had 12 children, or 12 sons, he had daughters too, when he had 12 sons and they all followed his ways, those things were getting better, but they got solidified when Manasseh and Ephraim, who were already in the next generation, when they followed his footsteps, despite the hardships and the environment in which they grew, Yaakov realized that the Jewish people can and will survive and thrive under the most adverse conditions anywhere. Finally, parenthetically, again, we have another set of siblings who were also great, that didn't fight, and they were not jealous of each other. And they demonstrated this harmony about which we're speaking. It was Moses and Aaron. They both exemplified unparalleled humility and harmony. When God said to Moshe, I want you to be the leader of the Jewish people, Moshe said, no, my brother. He argued with God. He said, my brother's older than me, take him. And God said to Moshe, Aaron will be glad to see you. He will be glad to see you succeed. He'll be glad to see you. So why then don't we bless our children each Friday night to be like Moshe and Aaron? It's tradition across the world, the Jewish world. People bless their children on Friday nights and on other holidays, etc. Why not bless them? And the blessing is that God should make you like Ephraim and Manasseh. The question is, why not Moshe and Aaron? Why not Moses and Aaron? Also for girls, it's Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. For boys, it's Manasseh and Ephraim. Why not Moshe and Aaron? So the answer is because even though their story was incredible, etc., but Moshe and Aaron didn't thrive amidst the spiritual adversity that Menashe and Ephraim did. And Menashe and Ephraim embody the resilience and adaptability that Jacob wanted to pass on to his descendants as a universal model. So, final question. Why is it that Ephraim was placed before Menashe? Why did Yaakov cross over his hands and place the younger before the older? So here says the Rebbe a fascinating thing. He says that the children, Ephraim and Menashe, they also symbolize modes of education, modes in our educating our children. Menashe, the names of these children, Menashe means that God had distanced me, put me away, threw me away from my father's household. Yosef named him longing for his father's household, reflecting the pain and being separated from his father's home. And that also demonstrates the idea, or refers to the education of staying away from negativity, of sur meira, stay away from negative. Ephraim's second name is Asei Tov. Yosef named his son Ephraim because God made him fruitful and thrive in this foreign area, in this foreign land. So the Rebbe teaches that both models are important in education. We need to keep our kids away from the negativity. But Ephraim, we also need to give them a sense of love and connection and inspiration. And actually, says the Rebbe, that comes first. We need to instill them with pride and service and purpose before we address the negativity. So that's where real growth comes from in our children, when they see the beauty and opportunities and they act upon our Torah wisdom and rituals. And that's how they grow in confidence and pride. And that's why Yaakov first blessed Ephraim, representing positivity, then Menashe representing being pulled away from something, which over here represents negativity. I'll end with a little story that happened today. Earlier today, I went with my wife, Sarah, who we just saw moments ago at the kosher food pantry, to visit a wonderful man, wonderful Jew, a great philanthropist, Mr. Joe Canfer. He's the founder of a company called Gojo, which makes the Purell. We clean our hands and keeps us safe. And he shared some of his Jewish journey with me and my wife. And despite his having an uninspiring beginning in the Jewish education, he eventually discovered and very much appreciated and appreciates the wisdom in the Torah, and made it central in his family life. And every Friday night, he told us he would engage his children and guests in discussions and stories about the Torah and about the role models in the Torah and how we can implement them in our day-to-day life. Not just his family, but also in his work. Mr. Canfer is involved in many organizations, and some of them are teaching leadership in the Jewish world and by extension the rest of the world. And he's bringing these leadership values that he found in the Torah into his professional life, implementing the ideas. As an example, he used role models from the Torah, figures like Nachshon, who jumped into the sea to start something brave and dangerous, and to actually use their names and ideas and be inspired by them to be role models for ourselves in our family and also in our work, which I think this is similar to the idea that we're talking about these poster figures that we all, children and adults, need, who can help us remind us and help us internalize and emulate their messages. That's the story for today. little bit longer than expected, and in a parking lot of a school over here across the kosher food pantry where I'm meant to be right now. So I'm gonna head right back over there and help my wife sign in the people. This is another value that the Jewish people excel in, to feed the poor and feed those who are less fortunate. But everyone, the bottom line of this whole message is everyone has a mission that is unique and no one else can fulfill. And our job is to thrive in our uniqueness and illuminate the world with your light. And just like Jacob blessed Ephraim and Manasseh in Egypt, we bless our children today with the hope and the prayer that they'll stand tall and proud no matter where life takes them. And thank you also again to dear Rabbi Ashkenazi, Shneir Ashkenazi, for inspiring me with these beautiful teachings from the Rebbe. He teaches them with passion and clarity, and I'm transmitting. I'm just a transmitter. God bless you all. Thanks for coming.